Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. I'm Andy and I love to talk about fun and interesting things to do in Florida. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on the 7 Wonders of Florida. If you haven't yet seen part 1, I'll link to that in the description and at the end of the video. In that one, I came up with my own list for what I thought the 7 natural wonders of Florida might be. And this week, it's time to look at the man-made wonders. I tried to think of places that are inspiring, noteworthy, or just very uniquely Florida. You might already have heard of the 7 man-made wonders of the world, and I tried to think of some places in Florida that might be like our own little Florida versions of those. And if you're not familiar with the 7 man-made wonders of the world, or just need a reminder, they are the Colosseum in Rome, the Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal, Christ the Redeemer, Machu Picchu, Chichen Itza, and Petra in Jordan. That list was selected from a worldwide poll done by the new 7 Wonders Foundation back in the year 2000. And surprisingly, the Great Pyramid of Giza didn't make the cut, but they did include it as an honorable mention. So in this list, I'll have a few honorable mentions of my own at the end as well. Okay, so here's what I came up with for Florida, my 7 man-made wonders of Florida. A reminder, this isn't necessarily the correct list, it's just my list. If you have a place you think deserves a spot on here, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. The Overseas Highway and the 7 Mile Bridge. The Overseas Highway is a 113-mile highway carrying U.S. Route 1 through the Florida Keys that runs from Florida City to Key West. It's considered one of the most scenic drives in the country, and driving on it should be on everybody's Florida bucket list. The construction of the Overseas Highway was complete and open to auto traffic in 1928, and eventually came to replace the Overseas Railroad that ran this same route from 1912 to 1935, when some sections of the railroad collapsed in the 1935 Labor Day hurricane. Probably the most famous section of the highway is the 7 Mile Bridge. The 7 Mile Bridge connects Knights Key in the Middle Keys to Little Duck Key in the Lower Keys. And the 7 Mile Bridge was one of the longest bridges in the world when it was first built. It's shown up in a few movies and TV shows over the years too, like the James Bond movie License to Kill, Too Fast, Too Furious, and of course in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie True Lies, where a portion of it was blown up by Harrier jets during a car chase. But no part of the bridge was actually harmed in that movie. What really exploded was a much shorter 80-foot bridge near Sugarloaf Key that was built specifically to blow up for the movie. Kennedy Space Center. Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral isn't just a Florida man-made wonder, but one that could really be on a list like this for the entire world. From the first satellites to manned spaceflight, the Apollo missions, the Space Shuttle, and now NASA's new Artemis rockets all launched from here. It's a major piece of American and even human history. The Vehicle Assembly Building is one of the largest buildings in the world by volume at over 129 million cubic feet. And at 526 feet, it's the world's tallest single-story building and the tallest building in the world outside of an urban area. To give this building some scale, Yankee Stadium can fit on the roof. The American flag on the side of it is 209 feet high and 110 feet wide. Each star is 6 feet across, each stripe is 9 feet wide. And Kennedy Space Center is an amazing place to visit that I'd highly recommend to anybody even slightly interested in this stuff. Just make sure you get on one of the bus tours. They're included in your admission, and they're the only way to get up close to the launch pads, the Vehicle Assembly Building, and the Apollo program exhibit, where you can see a Saturn V rocket up close. It's enormous and something you really need to see in person. And definitely don't miss the Apollo 8 firing room show or the Space Shuttle Atlantis exhibit. You could easily spend a fully packed day here. I love this place, and actually just now talking about it has me wanting to go back here again. Fort Jefferson in Dry Tortugas National Park. Fort Jefferson is a massive coastal fortress on Garden Key within Dry Tortugas National Park. That's about 70 miles west of Key West, and the only way to get out there is by boat or seaplane. So because it's kind of hard to reach for most people, it's one of the least visited national parks in the country. Fort Jefferson is the largest brick masonry structure in the Western Hemisphere. It was built in 1847 out of over 16 million bricks and covers 16 acres of land. Shipping 16 million bricks to a remote island in the Gulf of Mexico to build a massive fort like this must have been a huge effort for the time. It was originally conceived to help the U.S. Navy fight pirates in the area, but by the time it was eventually built, piracy wasn't such a big issue anymore. So instead, the fort was used as a lighthouse and as a forward defense fort to help protect the Gulf Coast against any future threat. But the fort never really saw much action. It was held by Union forces in the Civil War, who used it as a prison for soldiers who were guilty of desertion. But after the Civil War, it was mostly abandoned and left to the elements. A few decades worth of hurricanes started to slowly tear this place apart until 1898, when it was reoccupied by the Navy for a brief time during the Spanish-American War, but then quickly abandoned again. Finally, in 1935, Fort Jefferson was designated as a national monument by President Roosevelt, and the fort began being repaired and renovated as part of the New Deal's public works projects. Then in 1992, Fort Jefferson was established as part of Dry Tortugas National Park. The Coral Castle. Sometimes called Florida's Stonehenge, the Coral Castle is a limestone structure and sculpture garden in Homestead, created by the Latvian-American eccentric Edward Leeds Skellnan. The entire structure is made of blocks of limestone weighing several tons and was apparently created by just this one guy. He's never told anybody how he actually did it, nor would he even let anybody watch when he built it, but he claimed to know the secrets of how they built the pyramids, and he started working on this way back in 1920, and then he never stopped. He kept on adding to it and working on it until he passed away in 1951. The grounds of Coral Castle consist of over 1,000 tons of stone walls, carvings, furniture, and a castle tower. The stones are stuck together without any mortar and are just set on top of each other using their weight to keep them together. The craftsmanship detail is so fine, and the stones are connected with such precision that no light passes through any of the joints. This is a place that I sort of debated whether it belongs on a list of Florida man-made wonders or if it falls into that tourist trap territory, but the fact that this was all built by just one guy makes it a pretty special place, I think, and maybe he really does know how they built the pyramids, or maybe he had aliens to help him like some people believe. You can visit this place today as a Miami area tourist attraction, and it definitely has a bit of that old Florida kitsch factor attached to it, but I kind of think we need a little bit of old Florida cheesiness in a list like this. The Coral Castle was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1984. The Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. You know, I had to include at least one Florida theme park here, so I decided on the one that started it all. Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom broke ground in 1967, it opened in 1971, and has since become the most visited theme park in the world. Walt Disney wanted the Magic Kingdom to have an underground employee access only area so that park employees, or cast members as they're known, could easily move to any part of the park they needed to be without walking through the park and among the guests to do it. But Florida's high water table make basements here impossible, so they actually built this not-so-secret underground layer on the surface, then poured a mountain of dirt on top of that, and then built the Magic Kingdom over all of that. So when you're at Magic Kingdom, you're actually on the second floor of the park. All the cast members are getting into and out of character and ready for work just below you. And to get all that dirt, they had to dig out and create a new lake. Seven Seas Lagoon, that lake that's in front of Magic Kingdom that you need to take either a monorail around or cross the ferry on, is a result of needing all that dirt. Walt Disney World's impact on Florida is impossible to ignore. This is the place that sparked Central Florida's transformation from a sleepy little area in the middle of swamps and orange groves to Orlando becoming one of the most visited cities in the world. Miami's Art Deco district. The architecture around Miami Beach is iconic. It has this fun, quirky, neon-covered vibe that's really like no other place in the country and has kind of become that style that's loosely associated with Florida in general. Miami's Art Deco district comes mostly from the late 1920s to the 1940s, when Miami Beach was a booming oceanside resort town, attracting people from up north to spend their winter vacations in the sun. But since a lot of these buildings were built during tough times like the Depression and World War II, architects wanted their buildings here to evoke optimism and a brighter future. They wanted Miami to have its own distinct, exotic, slightly futuristic look and not remind all the tourists here of their cold northern cities back home. You'll know Art Deco when you see it. It's that classic kind of retro-futuristic look with rounded corners, neon lights, etched glass, porthole windows, glass bricks, and those bright pastel colors that we all associate with Miami. South Beach has the largest collection of Art Deco architecture in the country, with about 650 historically significant buildings in one area. Miami's Art Deco district was even added to the National Register of Historic Places. Ocean Drive on South Beach is that place that probably pops into a lot of people's heads when they imagine Miami, and that entire street is a great example of Art Deco that still evokes that fun, escapist feel that the original architects were going for. Castillo de San Marcos in St. Augustine. If you've ever been to St. Augustine and visited just one place there, it's a good chance this is the place you saw. It's the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States and the oldest building in Florida. Construction was completed in 1695 to defend the city back when Florida was still part of the Spanish Empire. The fort was built in response to a raid by the English pirate Robert Searle in 1668 that ended up destroying much of St. Augustine and damaged the old wooden fort that was already there. So they rebuilt the fort even bigger and better, replacing the wooden one with this new and improved one made out of coquina stone. It's funny to look back though and think how long things took. The city was attacked and burned down by a pirate in 1668, and so 27 years later, they finally had this shiny new fort ready to defend against the next one. And it was attacked again. The Castillo de San Marcos was attacked several more times and fell under siege twice by the English. First by English colonial forces in 1702, and then again in 1740. But the fort was never actually taken by force. Today you can still see some of the battle scars left behind by bullets and cannonballs on its surface. Possession of the fort has changed hands 6 times, all peacefully though, among 4 different governments. Spain, the Kingdom of Great Britain, Spain again, the United States, the Confederacy, and finally back to the United States again. It's now managed by the National Park Service and is really a must-see place in St. Augustine. So that's my own personal list of the 7 man-made wonders of Florida. And I do have a few honorable mentions that almost made my list, and maybe you'd include them on your list like this. Bach Tower in Lake Wales, Flagler College in St. Augustine, and the Sunshine Skyway Bridge that crosses over the mouth of Tampa Bay are all amazing things here in Florida, and they could really all deserve a spot on a list like this. And thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified the next time I post a video about fun and interesting things around Florida.